He was so rich that normal numbers couldn't explain his fortune. So rich that kings and emperors lined up at his door begging for loans. So powerful that he didn't just influence politics. He decided who ruled entire continents. And yet, you've probably never heard his name. Jakob Fugger, the richest man who ever lived. His net worth in today's value? An estimated $533 billion. That's more than Bezos, Musk, and even Rockefeller. And the craziest part? His family is still wealthy, 500 years later, off the empire he built. This is his unbelievable story. Jakob Fugger was born in 1459 in the German city of Augsburg, a wealthy trading hub at the time. His family already had a business in textiles, but textiles were small money. The young Fugger had bigger ambitions. Unlike other merchants who traded cloth, spices, or wool, Jacob saw something nobody else dared touch: the money business. Banking, lending, mining, dangerous industries that carried incredible risks, but also unimaginable rewards. By the late 1480s, Fugger started lending vast sums to Europe's kings and nobles. But here's the genius. He didn't just demand repayment in cash. His collateral was far more powerful: mining rights. He would give rulers the money they desperately needed, and in return, he gained control of their copper and silver mines. When rulers couldn't pay him back, and many couldn't, Fugger simply took the mines for himself. Think about what that meant. Copper wasn't just a resource. It was the backbone of coinage, weapons, and trade. Silver was the foundation of currency. By controlling the mines, Fugger controlled the flow of Europe's money and power. In 1494, Fugger created something revolutionary for the time: joint stock mining companies in Hungary and Tyrol. This allowed him to pool investments, spread risks, and scale his operations like never before. Soon, he controlled over half of Europe's copper output. That's not just domination. That's monopoly-level control over the material that literally fueled armies and economies. And Fugger wasn't content with just Europe. Between 1505 and 1506, he co-financed Germany's very first trade expedition to India. While most merchants were still battling for scraps in European markets, Fugger was thinking globally, stretching his reach from Spain to Hungary, from Rome to the Middle East, and into Asia. He had built the world's first true financial empire. But his greatest play came in 1519, the most expensive political gamble in European history. The Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian had died, and the throne was up for grabs. The leading candidate? Charles of Habsburg, who would later become Charles V. But Charles had a problem. The title wasn't won by bloodline alone. It had to be bought. Electors demanded bribes and gifts to secure their votes, and Charles needed an astronomical 850,000 guilders. Guess who stepped in? Jakob Fugger. He personally financed 65% of the campaign's cost, around 550,000 guilders. Without Fugger, Charles would never have been crowned emperor. With Fugger's money, Charles won, becoming the ruler of one of the largest empires in history, stretching across Europe and into the Americas. And Charles never forgot who made it possible. This moment cemented Fugger's power. He didn't just influence politics. He decided politics. He made emperors. He pulled the strings of Europe itself. By the 1520s, Jakob Fugger's empire was unstoppable. He controlled over half of Europe's copper supply, monopolized silver mining across multiple countries, ran the first international banking network, and handled the transfer of currencies, trade, and loans across the globe. At the time of his death in 1525, after debts were cleared, Fugger's assets totaled 2,132,261 guilders. Adjusted for today, that's an astonishing $400 to $533 billion. To put this into perspective, John D. Rockefeller at his peak held around $405 to $650 billion adjusted. Elon Musk peaked around $465 billion. Jeff Bezos peaked around $246 billion. But here's the kicker. Compared to GDP, Fugger's wealth was unmatched. His fortune equaled 2% of Europe's entire GDP. By comparison, Musk's fortune is just 0.4% of the US GDP. Fugger wasn't just rich, he was untouchable. But it wasn't just about the money he made, it was about what he invented along the way. Jakob Fugger pioneered tools we still use today. Double-entry bookkeeping, which became the backbone of accounting. International banking networks that allowed money to move across borders. Joint stock companies, laying the foundation for modern corporations. In many ways, Fugger wasn't just a banker. He was the architect of modern capitalism. He created systems that allowed wealth to grow across generations, economies to expand, and businesses to scale globally. Fugger died in 1525 without direct heirs, but his nephews inherited the empire and doubled it again within a few decades. But perhaps the most interesting part of his legacy isn't just castles, titles, or riches. It's something called the Fuggerei. Founded in 1521 by Jakob Fugger himself, the Fuggerei was the world's first social housing project, and it still exists today. In Augsburg, Germany, poor families can live there for a rent that hasn't changed in 500 years, just 1 guilder a year, or about €1 today. Think about that. The richest man in history built affordable housing that continues to help people half a millennium later. And his family? They're still around. The Fuggers remain a noble dynasty, still owning properties, lands, and wealth. The fortune that Jakob built continues to echo through history. Jakob Fugger wasn't just a merchant, a banker, or even a billionaire. He was a kingmaker, a man who bent Europe to his will using nothing but money, strategy, and vision. He made emperors, built the backbone of modern finance, and left behind a fortune so massive it has never truly been surpassed. If Rockefeller was America's oil king and Musk is today's tech titan, then Jakob Fugger was the man who invented the very game of wealth itself. 5 centuries later, his empire still whispers in the halls of power, proof that money, once concentrated in the right hands, can outlast nations, rulers, and even empires.